Welcome to TYT, folks. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. Solo hour. Cenk Uygur will be joining me in the second hour before he gets to his revolution in the bonus segment. But we've got such a great show ahead for you guys today. Any day that we get to kind of dive into history in order to explain what's happening today, I get super excited. And believe it or not, the story that I'm most excited about has to do with something Hillary Clinton said, of all people. Now, I don't agree with what she said, but that makes the segment even better. So I'll be talking about her comments at a conference recently, and the way that Hillary Clinton as a human being actually devolved, and I'll provide some evidence of that. We're also going to kind of jump into what's transpiring with our current economic situation here in the United States and what Trump has to say about it. Remember, one of the main reasons why he won the popular vote is because he said that he was going to be the cop that stops it. He's going to be the one that ends inflation. But a lot of Americans are leaning into credit cards in order to make ends meet. So we'll give you some stats on that. Also, Little Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, has some thoughts on extremist ideology and how it seeks to take over our country. It's really interesting who he's pointing fingers at. So we'll talk about that. Anyway, a lot to get to. I don't want to waste any time. So why don't we start off with this?
The word affordability is a Democrat scam.
Look at this in January. Donald Trump's net approval rating, not too bad, not too great. It was at -1 point, right within the margin of error, breaking even. But look at this now, negative 24 points, way down. We're talking about a drop of over 20 points in the wrong direction for the President of the United States.
President Donald Trump is taking an absolute nosedive in the polls. And as much as he wants to believe that the word affordability is nothing but a Democrat hoax, the fact of the matter is Democrats and Republicans in this country alike are really struggling with the current economic situation here in the US, especially as the holidays are upon us. People are buying gifts. And later in this segment, I'm going to tell you just how devastating things are when it has to do with consumer debt and these buy now, pay later services. Now, let's get to some of these details because the Democrat scam known as affordability is a big reason why Trump is taking that nosedive in the polls. And ironically, just a few days ago, Trump actually called himself, this is hilarious, the affordability president. So today, affordability is a Democrat hoax. But just a few days ago, he called himself the affordability president. Okay. So he delusionally, if you ask me, wrote on Truth Social, because I have invoked favored nations status for the United States of America, drug prices are falling at levels never seen before, 500%, 600%, 700%, and more. So you heard it here, folks. When you go pick up your prescription drugs at the pharmacy, they're actually going to give you money. You don't have to pay anything. They're going to give you money. Obviously, that is not true. Now, there's a small area where I will give Trump a tiny bit of credit. Hold on for that. But here's some more details. So he also writes that this is a revolution in medicine, the biggest and most important event ever. He's our president, everybody. If this story is properly told, we should win the midterm elections in record numbers. I am the affordability president. Talk loudly and proudly, President DJT. Now, look, the thing about lying to the American people is that if you're sophisticated enough, you can definitely manipulate people. Not everybody, but some people will be easily manipulated because they operate based on tribal politics. They want to root for their guy. And, our media really doesn't do a great job digging into the numbers, the stats, and what the reality is on the ground. But when it comes to the economy and Americans' pocketbooks, you better believe they know what's going on. right? Because we see the prices at the grocery stores. We know how much debt we're in because we're not making enough of a living in order to live off those wages, and we have to charge things on credit cards. Everyone knows what the economic situation is on the ground here in the United States. The housing crisis is still very much a crisis. It is nearly impossible for young families to purchase a home, which was one of the only ways that Americans were able to build wealth in this country. That opportunity snatched away, and there hasn't really been any actual solutions, even proposed or presented by the Trump administration. So this is the one area in which Trump's lies, his fibs, his nonsense, and he is a great marketer. He knows how to market himself, but it's not going to save him in this specific scenario because the economy touches all of us. There's no escape from it. So let's get to some more details about what's happening here because Trump thinks that Americans are stupid, if you ask me. I mean, lying to our faces about what we're experiencing with the economy and thinking we're gonna believe it means he thinks we're stupid. But obviously we're not. Now, putting that aside, the Trump administration is working, at least he claims, to achieve what's known as favored nations status for the United States. Now, that is important, and I'll explain what that is. So the idea behind this designation is that it would prevent pharmaceutical companies from price gouging Americans compared to what other developed nations are paying for the exact same drugs. So I'll give you a specific example. One brand of asthma inhaler, for example, runs $248 per 30 puffs in the US and just $49 in France. It's quite a disparity, and this has been going on for a very, very long period of time. And so Trump has been negotiating with pharmaceutical companies to lower drug prices for Americans, which, let me be clear, is a good thing. That is a good thing, but there is a catch. Now, if he was able to rein in these pharmaceutical drug companies that rely on our taxpayer dollars for their research and development and essentially force them to charge us what other nations are being charged, that's great. But there's an added layer to this that I don't think is great. Now, what am I talking about? Basically, he is trying to get the pharmaceutical companies to charge other developed nations more for their pharmaceutical drugs. So let's get to the details there. So the Trump administration has promised pharmaceutical companies that they will push to increase drug prices in other countries. And so far, they have succeeded, at least in one case. And I'm sorry to all of our friends over in the UK, but you guys are the victims here. So basically, the UK government will raise the net price it pays for new patented medicines by 25% and revamp a tax program to ease the burden on drug companies.
You know what TYT has always been about? Taking on the corrupt, greedy establishment. For us, it's the corporate media. We've been fighting that fight for over 20 years. For the cell phone industry, it's the same story. A handful of massive corporations ripping you off. That's why we're partnering with Noble Mobile. They're the only wireless company with the same mission as ours, to fight back. Their Noble plan offers unlimited data for just $50 a month. But here's the best part. For any data that you don't use, you get cash back. Real money you can spend however you want. Stop letting your unused data pad the pockets of billionaires. With Noble, you take control over your data. And by switching to Noble, you're directly supporting TYT in our mission of bringing you honest, independent news. So give Noble a try and make the switch today. Scan the QR code on the screen now or visit go.tyt.com/plan. That's go.tyt.com/plan.
So as I was reading that at first, I was like, oh, ease the burden on, citizens in the UK because now they're gonna have to pay 25% more for the drugs. No. The pharmaceutical companies get to charge people in the UK more, as much as 25%. And on top of that, the UK is supposed to agree to rewrite their tax code, I guess, in a way that would be even more beneficial to the pharmaceutical companies. Look, I care about America first, I really do. But I also do not want other people to suffer simply because they're not in our country. They shouldn't be price gouged for pharmaceutical drugs either. So I take issue with that for sure. And remember, I had an interview on this show in which an expert that's been studying this mentioned, the whole favored nations scam really is a scam because what Trump is actually trying to do is get the price of pharmaceutical drugs in other countries to go up And then we're still paying a lot for pharmaceutical drugs. We're still being price gouged. The only difference is all the other countries are also being price gouged. That doesn't really make me feel better. You know what I'm saying? So let's get to the overall economic situation, because overall, things aren't so great for Americans here. They're struggling to afford more than just their medical expenses. So a new Washington Post ABC Ipsos poll found that a majority of Americans say that they're spending more on groceries and utilities than they were a year ago. And Americans were not happy a year ago under Biden. Remember, his economy was something that essentially led to a lot of backlash toward the Biden administration. But things are clearly, according to what people are saying in these polls, even worse now. So also, there's a recent NBC News poll that found that only 30% of voters believe that Trump has lived up to their expectations for tackling inflation and the cost of living. And here are some alarming statistics from Moneyline, which surveyed Americans to see what their, debt situation looks like. And I knew this was going to be bad because consumer debt just keeps breaking records year after year. That is not good news. So 84% of Americans plan to use credit cards to manage holiday spending, and 30% plan to use buy now, pay later. Buy now, pay later is a growing issue because it makes it so easy for people to just agree and go into debt for all sorts of consumer items. And I just, if you are ever tempted to do it, really ask yourself, do I need the item that I'm thinking about buying now and going into debt for it? That's what it really is. It's just debt, right? Buy now, pay later. They're not doing you a favor. They're doing themselves a favor. They're making money off of you by using that service. Now, 25% of Americans are planning to take an extra job to help supplement their income for the holidays, including 44% of Gen Z and 34% of millennials. Now, Vice President JD Vance appears to be more aware and a little more caring about this issue than Donald Trump has been. At least that's what his messaging would indicate. On one hand, you have Trump arguing that this is a Democrat hoax. JD Vance is like, maybe I don't go in that direction. Maybe I at least acknowledge the pain that Americans are experiencing. Now, he doesn't really offer any solutions for it, but he does say we need to focus on the home front. Elaborate on that a little, JD. What do you mean we need to focus on the home front? Do you mean maybe we stop going into more debt to provide Israel with weapons to steal land from various Middle Eastern countries and commit atrocities against the Palestinian people? Is that what you're referring to? Let me continue. Here's what else he says. The president has done a lot that has already paid off in lower interest rates and lower inflation. We are experiencing the beginning stages of stagflation. Okay, unemployment is increasing. And you have the Federal Reserve, lowering interest rates. It hasn't been a massive cut in interest rates, but we all know what happens if the Federal Reserve cuts the interest rates preemptively or too soon. That is going to heat up the economy even more. So right now, we have rising unemployment, but we also have rising inflation. Inflation in the last reports is at 3%, which isn't good. And the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates didn't really help with the inflationary situation. So saying that Trump has already taken action, all he's done is bully Jerome Powell into lowering interest rates. And it didn't work because Americans are still struggling. So, look, I guess better attempt at lying to the American people compared to Trump. He didn't even try. JD Vance is at least trying. So I guess A for effort, although he's not being completely honest here. Here's more. Goes on about how we inherited a disaster from Joe Biden and Rome wasn't built in a day. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and blame others for the failures of our administration. We're going to keep on working to make a decent life affordable in this country, and that's the metric by which we'll ultimately be judged in 2026 and beyond. How about banning private equity firms and foreign interests from buying up residential real estate? The only people who should be allowed to buy homes in America at this moment, as we have a severe housing shortage, should be Americans. But on top of that, what is the Trump administration doing to spur more construction for housing? I haven't seen anything on that at all. Trump is too busy with his crypto schemes and his various business deals with Saudis and other various countries, the Qataris. That's what Trump is up to. He's getting the bag. Okay, we are not getting the bag as the American people. And really, to say that there's like this intense focus on improving the economic situation for Americans, it's laughable and it's honestly insulting. Now, he also says, or last week he posted that after 4 years of house prices doubling and in some areas tripling, many young people feel priced out of the American dream of homeownership. Wow, congratulations for realizing that. I mean, are you going to do anything about, like, what are you going to do about it? Nothing? Oh, you're just going to acknowledge that it's a problem. Okay. And that's one thing that I really want to emphasize with this story and with anything having to do with the political horse race. Just because a politician simply acknowledges reality should not be like the gold standard of who you should support politically. Okay, you have identified the problem. Congratulations, a 5-year-old at this point can do that. What are you going to do about it? And by the way, this is a criticism I have for prominent political figures on both sides of the political aisle. Leading up to the 2024 election, I was making arguments like this about the Biden administration when they were telling all of us that the economy was fantastic. Oh, GDP, fantastic. The stock market, fantastic. I don't care. For me, what matters is, are people earning decent wages? Are they able to buy a home? Are they able to get married? Are they able to afford having kids if they choose to have kids? These are the real questions we should be asking. Are they able to, work a full-time job, 40 hours a week, not have to take on a second job and make ends meet? Because remember, for all of the grief that SNAP recipients have been getting recently, upward of 60% of them literally work full-time jobs. So we are subsidizing corporations that are not paying them a living wage in this country. We should be more upset about that as opposed to, the thought of our fellow Americans needing a public service like SNAP in order to feed themselves and their families. So there are two big questions here. Will the Trump administration take decisive action to lower prices? And by the way, what would that look like? Harry Enten thinks the answer is no, and here's why.
How does this compare to other presidents in their second term at this point in time?
Yeah, okay. So, this is one of these great examples where I kind of run out of room on the slide.
I did.
Yeah, I run out of room on the slide. So I just put up the Republican presidents. But look, the only one who's worse for me, either among Republicans or Democrats at this point in second term, is Richard Nixon. And of course, Richard Nixon had to wave adios amigos goodbye less than a year after this poll was taken. He was at minus 36 points. Trump at minus 24 points. Anywhere you look, this is the second worst for a president of either party at this point in their second term, dating all the way back since the 1940s. Were there any presidents who saw their net approval ratings rise by more than 5 points? Well, guess what, Sarah Sider? You go all the way back since Harry S. Truman. 0 out of 8 times did the president's net approval rating rise by over 5 points. And of course, Donald Trump, right now in Gallup, minus 24 points. He's in the minus teens according to the average. If he does not see a rise of more than 5 points, see you later, that Republican majority. It has never happened.
So it would be incredibly challenging for President Trump to increase his poll numbers. But if he even wanted to try, I think the first step he could take is maybe stop hobnobbing with former Al-Qaeda terrorists and butchers from Saudi Arabia over at the Oval. Maybe spend your free time, if you have any, on your various crypto schemes and business deals with foreign countries. Maybe spare a minute or two to actually think about what's happening here on the ground and how the United States is suffering under an inflationary period, an economic situation in which jobs are being totally destroyed by, AI technology and by corporations, kind of putting the cart before the horse and firing a bunch of people before AI is even developed enough to do the job that human beings can do. But nonetheless, he seems aloof. Okay, he seems like he doesn't really care that much. And then when anyone dares to bring up how this is hurting him in the polls, he lashes out like a child. And I'm just sick of being governed by 80-year-old children. Okay, I'm sick of being lied to, and I'm sick of watching the people of this country get left behind by the political elite who use their positions of power to enrich themselves, to build businesses for themselves, to engage in insider trading. I'm sick of it. And I don't care what their party affiliation is. Okay, we have been let down again and again and again, and I'm just sick of being lied to. So when they're lying to your face, recognize it and push back, because we deserve better than this.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.